Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 4 between UC Riverside and UCSD. This game is between NrGCheese, aka Andrew Chen, playing for UCSD, against GupO, playing as Aaron Park. We have GupO in the 2 o'clock position and NrGCheese, aka Cheese, from now on playing in the 8 o'clock position, and it does look like we are back to the standard old-fashioned 1 versus 1 format of the CSL League. Once again, this is game number 4. Currently UCR is ahead 2-1, and I'm really interested to see what these two players can do. UCSD is down, and it does look like we do have a forward pylon go down for Cheese. Looks like he does want to take that very fast natural. Notice these two players are in cross positions, and that rush distance is absolutely huge all the way across the map. So it will take a very long time for any early aggression to cross the map. Both players, if they scout properly, they can see this coming. Maybe if Protoss throw down a few cannons, as Zerg, hopefully spine crawlers. And I'm really interested to see how these two players play. UCSD really needs to try to get back on even footing, because they are 1 game behind. They really do need to get ahead on. There's a forge. It does look like NrGCheese does want to be safe. He doesn't know if his opponent is in a close position. Doesn't want to go down with that Nexus first. And same thing with GupO. We do see a very fast spawning pool first for GupO, so no hatch first, despite the map Tal'Darim altar. Probably just not sure if there will be Cheese, and it does look like Cheese, I get it now, his name. It does look like Cheese does scout, does see the spawning pool first. I'm not sure if he did scout close enough to see that there was no hatchery. It's entirely possible, but of course you never really know. And now it does look like Cheese is saving up his minerals to drop his Nexus back at the natural, dancing around with the probe, just waiting for it. Cheese does scout, sees that there is no hatchery, and decides to go on and head back in. And here's the probe being pulled now for GupO, trying to see if it can drop the hatch, but there is a probe for Cheese, going to block it, going to see if he can deny it. It's this on hold position. No, it is not. GupO, see if he can micro it, and the pylon goes down. This is really going to delay GupO's expansion, simply because the rocks at the 3rd prevent a fast 3rd. The only real close place besides that one is to go all the way to the 4th, which, if you'll notice, is a good quarter of the map away, which is something you really don't want to do this early into the game. We do have GupO scouting as well. He does see the forge first into the Nexus, does see the cannon go down along with a gateway to complete the wall, does not see the gateway, but you hopefully can assume the Zergling's now going to take out that pylon. More and more of them chasing away the probe for Cheese. And it does look like we're going to have a pretty standard macro game. Cheese will be ahead for a while, simply because GupO has to drop his natural before going to take out these rocks to take his 3rd, which is the only chance he has to catch up macro, especially if GupO chrono boosts out his probes, which he only now has just started doing. We do see the Maynard go down to try to defend, and some Zerglings just going across the map trying to see if they can scout any information, maybe sneak by the cannon and get it into the main, but I don't think they will be able to. These Zerglings without speed are going to be exceptionally slow compared to the cannon's rate of fire, which in my personal opinion is absolutely huge, especially now that there is a cyber core giving them even that much more distance to have to run around. And we do see a hatchery actually dropping next to the rocks. It does look like GupO wants to try to get that advantage in macro as quickly as possible. It will certainly be interesting to see if he can catch up. The drones will have to remote mine. That is a much larger distance, and the mining time will be greatly increased for those drones. We do see the Maynard going down for the natural, despite the hatchery not being close to finished. I feel like that is just a little bit too soon. Creeps is continuing to be spread. We don't see any gas for GupO yet. Gas has been taken for Cheese. It does look like Warp Gate is on the way. A sentry for defense. The Cyber Core is researching Warp Gate. Relatively standard play from both players. The Zerglings trying to see if they can poke into a little bit of damage, but I believe this Zealot is holding in the wall, and I'm trying to find which button rotates my camera, and that is not it. There we go. So yes, there is actually room for the Zerglings to sneak on by with the Zealot there. However, I don't think they'll be able to with the 1 cannon there, a sentry for force fields, and another cannon going down just now for defense. Cheese grabbing quick +1. It does look like we're going to have a quick Time attack, these drones are actually set to mine the long distance base rather than populate the natural, which is already relatively close to being saturated. Only 2 more drones to full saturation for Zerg. So this is actually getting pretty interesting. Roach Warren and an Evo chamber going down. It does look like GupO is going to be mimicking our favorite barefoot Zerg, Stefano, and just going to be trying to go for that fast 3-base macro. The Zerglings now starting to break down the rocks with 3 armor compared to the Zerglings' 5 damage. So each time the Zergling attacks, it's only doing 2 damage to the rocks. This is going to take a while. So yeah, we do have gas now going down for GupO. It does look like there are only 2 guys, 2 workers in this 3rd gas. I'm not sure if that's a mistake, and we have a little bit of supply block despite the chrono going down for Cheese. He's just getting a little bit caught up, falling behind just a little bit. Robo Bay, relatively standard, probably going to see an observer followed by a quick immortal, maybe a warp prism if Cheese feels like putting on the harass. However, GupO does have his creep spread relatively well. It's going out across the map, connecting all the bases along with some overlords, spotting for vision at the 3rd. The back of GupO's main is also spotted, so I don't think the warp prism would be able to do any harass if Cheese even decided to make one. So we do have another scout going out for Cheese. I'm not sure if he's going to proxy a building, or maybe he's just going to try to take a quick 4th despite GupO's scouting with the Overlord. I'm really not sure what that probe was doing, though I am interested. And GupO now starting to switch into roaches. We take a look at the supply. GupO is up to 82 to Cheese's 66. So Queen going out, spawning larva. The roaches finally breaking down the rocks. Let's see if GupO does drop a hatchery just above this one to try to increase the mining efficiency of this base, and it doesn't look like it's going down. And it does look like we have Cheese heading across the map with a healthy number, 7 sentries and 2 stalkers. So it does look like Cheese decides he wants to put on the early pressure. He needs to get that supporting probe with the pylon. There it is right there. And GupO actually now up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gateways with a Robo Bay on the way. So GupO going to put on some pressure. Did not see an immortal. It does look like Cheese is going straight into Colossi tech for just using the rush distance of the map. Speed is not finished for the Zerglings, so they will not be able to flank as well or get in to do damage. And it does look like this probe is getting in to see if it can drop a forward pylon into an offensive position before finally backing off. It sees the Overlord, knows that it's been spotted. Zerglings are coming around to try to spot, and it does look like GupO's roaches are going to try to swing around behind the army and catch them in position. The Zerglings aren't ready. They need to get in to attack. And now they stream in. We'll see the force fields going down. The Zealots buffering the damage, but it won't be enough. The roaches are doing tons and tons of damage. This army is just caught in a terrible position. An excellent flank from GupO. Cheese dropping more Zealots behind to try to soak the roach damage, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. And GupO holds this excellently, completely obliterating Cheese's small force. He's going to be able to wipe out all of those pylons. That's a large amount of minerals and units lost by this force. Cheese is definitely behind. He needs to waste that gas to get those sentries out. We have Colossi being chrono boosted out. Meanwhile, +1 armor is also on its way out. This forward push doesn't look like it was enough. And now GupO immediately going on the counterattack, sending those Zerglings in to see if he can do a little bit of damage, but I guess it was just a little bit of miscontrol. These 2 cannons, 3 sentries will be able to hold this relatively well, but the roaches are just starting to stream in across the map. 23 roaches are on their way to see if they can do any damage, but 1 Colossi should be finished. Am I hallucinating? No, there is 1 Colossi. It's held behind the mineral line, and the roaches are going to try to snipe the forge before +1 armor finishes. They do manage to get it and cancel that +1 armor. That is huge. Really sets Cheese behind. And it does look like GupO is going to try to snipe the cyber core. That will prevent any advanced tech from warping in for tier 1. And the roaches are going to try to engage the army now, but they're being picked off by the cannons and that Colossi, taking tons of damage. And it does look like the roaches are finally going to be repelled. So much damage has been done, though, losing both the forge with +1 armor and the cyber core, which is preventing warp-ins of stalkers and sentries. So currently Cheese is limited to Zealot Colossi, which in my opinion is a fantastic composition, but it just won't be enough against these roaches. 2 Colossi are currently on the field. They do not have the range upgrade. They do have the range upgrade, has already been completed, so they will be able to repel the roaches, and the roaches do fall back across the map. It does look like GupO has claimed excellent map control. has not dropped an extra hatchery at the third yet to try to make mining more efficient, has not tried to take a fourth. So it does look like GupO is just going to try to put the pressure on, see if he can win the game, but the force fields separate the Roach army, prevent them from getting in on the Colossi, trying to focus fire down the army of Cheese, but it doesn't look like it's enough. The Roaches are getting obliterated by these +1 Colossi. So much damage is being done. The Gateway is back in production to try to complete the wall, but the Roaches are streaming in, doing tons of damage. +1 Carapace is on production, 10 seconds away from finishing for GupO. He probably should have waited for that. Just trying to see if he could get any more life out of these to negate the +1 attack for Cheese, but the Roaches are just doing so much damage, keeping Cheese's army whittled down, but so many Colossi are out on the field now that Cheese, looks like he will just be able to continue taking out this Roach push that is coming from GupO. A hatchery finally goes down at the third, along with a Spire that I missed production of, so Corruptors are on the way to try to take out these Colossi. It does look like GupO just wants to end the game. He's comfortable on his 3 bases. He knows his army is in a better position because he caught Cheese in a bad spot early game. However, continuing to throw his army away without doing real damage, despite taking out the Cyber and the Forge, which has happened a good 3 or 4 minutes ago. GupO, he is 35, 36 supply ahead. I don't entirely agree with continuing to put pressure on to Cheese's army. Cheese really has the Colossi advantage, 4 Colossi that'll be able to melt any ground forces, and we do have an Overseer morphing in to try to scout anything, but there aren't enough Corruptors to be able to take out this massive Colossi ball. The Roaches are just whittling down and down, taking tons and tons of damage, but the Roaches are actually now going to try to snipe the Colossi. There aren't enough Corruptors to take them out. They do so much damage to the Roaches, tons and tons of damage. Finally, 2 Colossi does go down. There's only 2 left. One of them is at dangerously low health. Probably can be taken out with these 3 Corruptors, but GupO really needs to add more Corruptors to that army to take out the large Colossi count. Wow, we're back up to 3. Both players are just macro up, and finally GupO drops a macro hatch and decides to drop his 4th at the close position rather than stretching out to the far position. And both players are getting comfortable again. Cheese, after he held that push, he feels that he can reward himself with his 3rd, try to get that macro ball up. Zerglings now in production, and it is my personal experience that Zerglings are absolutely terrible against Colossi unless you can literally just completely overwhelm your opponent's army. Finally, we do have +1 attack in production for GupO, so it does look like he's starting to catch up just a little bit with the range Roaches. And now we're starting to get up to a healthy number of Corruptors. That is 9 Corruptors. That'll be able to take out those Colossi just a little bit better. But Cheese continuing to build up the army, does have Stalkers, Zealots, has a very, very solid mix of units, 2 Sentries to try to soak a little bit of damage. I really disagree with losing so many Sentries. That energy for Force Fields and Guardian Shield is so important when the engagement comes, and it does look like the Corruptors are going to try to scout ahead, see if they can pick off anything. A Twilight Council is down, but Blink is not finished for these Stalkers, and the Corruptors are just going to snipe one of the Colossi, picking it off. 1 Corruptor for 1 Colossi. Oh, 2 Corruptors, excuse me. I will take that any day. Colossi do so much damage to a ground army, and Colossi are just being chronoed out non-stop. Cheese maintaining that massive Protoss death ball that is just ever so popular, and the Corruptor's going to see if they can snipe another, but they are not supported by the ground army, so the Stalkers do get in, and oh, it does look like I missed a little bit of an engage here. The Zealots and Roaches did try to sneak in, do a little bit of damage, but the 2 cannons were able to hold it off. +2 weapons is now on production for Cheese. It does look like that Forge did go back down, which allowed for the production of cannons. Meanwhile, GupO has dropped an Infestation Pit to try to tech up, and Cheese now sees GupO's army, and it does get off a preliminary attack with the Colossi. The Corruptors really need to stay with that army. The Stalkers are so fast they're going to be able to pick it up, and it does look like GupO is just going to run into Cheese's main, see if he can do as much damage as possible. The Zerglings running in, seeing if they can do more damage to the production buildings, take out the gateways. The Roaches are pulling off to the side to see if they can do any damage to the 3rd. Actually, they're just baiting Cheese's army out of position, and Cheese is forced to head back into the main to try to salvage what he can. Nothing has been destroyed yet. The Zerglings look like they're just distracting the army. The Colossi, Corruptors trying to see if they can snipe any Colossi out of position, but it doesn't look like they were able to, and GupO does not do enough damage to really justify this attack. He does sacrifice a healthy number of Zerglings, and now we do have +2/+2 in production for GupO, along with +3 for the hive. Excuse me, just upgrading for the hive. No upgrades for the aerial units yet, and it does look like the roaches were trying to get in, see if they can snipe the forge. They do take out the forge, preventing that +2 weapons once again. GupO keeping Cheese on his toes, trying to put on as much pressure, deny map control, but really Cheese has built up to quite a large army now. We take a look at the army supply. It does look like both players are relatively even, if not Cheese is ahead by, 26 supply, worker supply. GupO is very, very high in worker supply, up to 90. What is that? Is that really 87, 86? There he goes. Now he's dropping a very, very large number of spine crawlers, creating an impenetrable fortress. GupO finally realizes that his army was so small because he had so many workers before making 19 spine crawlers. This is very interesting. I haven't seen anything like this for a very long time. I'm really looking forward to see how Cheese will be able to engage this. GupO really needs to get some more air units to defend, because the only thing that can break a wall like this is the range 9 of the Colossi. And if those Colossi are supported by the Stalkers, they can just continue to rain fire onto these spine crawlers. And it does look like GupO swinging in for the engage, trying to see if he can snipe a Colossi, but they are so powerful, they just completely obliterate the roaches. So much damage is being done to these armies. The roaches do not have burrows, so they cannot regenerate. I really feel like that would be a great addition just to keep the life of the roaches up. And infestors are finally out. They do have pathogen glands, which allows them to get a quick fungal growth out and do tons and tons of damage to the Protoss army just by locking it into position. And Blink is now finished for the Stalkers. Greater Spire is in production. Both players are really starting to macro up, build up these massive armies, and we do see a couple pylons going down to put on the forward pressure. GupO, meanwhile, has taken his 5th, but it is not saturated. And I'm really looking forward to the engagement between these two armies. The roaches do tons and tons of damage against the Tier 1 army, and it does look like Cheese is finally sneaking in to see if he can do a little bit of damage. And the spine crawlers actually creating a tower defense effect. Fungal growth going down on some of the units, and excellent force fields separate some of the roaches, allowing them to get sniped off. More and more corruptors in production. That's so many Colossi. 4 Colossi, they do so much damage. 3 Broodlords finally in production now that the Greater Spire is finished. The Colossi slowly whittling down the spine crawlers. This is exactly what I was talking about with the support of the ground army. The Roach Infestor cannot engage without the superior range of the Broodlords, which are only just now in production. Fungal growth going down, locking down the Colossi. The Roaches going down to try to snipe them, see if they can do as much damage as possible. 1 Colossi lives. Force fields manage to hold off the army. The sentry count does look like it's finally been replenished, so it does look like Cheese is able to hold the pressure relatively well. More and more Broodlords in production. Really need to see these Broodlords defended a little bit better. A Blink in right now could snipe these Broodlords with the spine crawlers right there. That would actually be a bad idea. I correct myself. More and more Colossi coming across the map, seeing if they can do more and more damage to the army. Both players relatively even on supply. 185 supplied to 196 for the Zerg. +3 missile attack and Zerg Flyer Carapace 1 now in production. Charge going down for the Zealots. That'll allow them to engage the roaches that much better. And finally, Cheese decides to fall back across the map, but GupO immediately chases him back with a smattering of roaches and a few corruptors. But they're really not with the rest of the army, with the Broodlord fleet. They're getting a little bit separated and take a lot of damage. The Corruptors need to be careful. Those 3 Corruptors are now going down. Blink allows the Corruptors to go down. The Broodlords are engaging the Stalkers, which just use Blink, so they will not be able to get in and snipe the damage that needs to be done. Fungal growth carpeting the Protoss army, doing so much damage, but the Broodlords are just not supported by the ground army. It doesn't look like it will be enough, and Cheese will be able to hold this out. So many fungal growths locking down that Stalker force, taking tons of damage to the Broodlords. The Infestors finally running away. The Broodlords getting wiped out. Roaches, tons and tons of roaches in production for Cheese, but it does look like it will not be enough. The Protoss at 180 supply and GupO the Zerg at 146. Both players have effectively diminished their army quite successfully, and we had a small 3 roach contingent taking out Cheese's 4th, but it doesn't look like it was enough to really equalize the armies. Both players playing excellently right now. Really, really interesting game. And oh dear, it does look like Cheese has completely mined out both his main and his natural, and is mining only from his 3rd. So Cheese really needs to secure additional mining bases, really needs to be careful. I suppose that's why he pulled out in the beginning. Finally, GupO has mined out his main. His natural is almost completely mined out. It is very, very close to being mined out. The 3rd is mining at very, very low efficiency, and the 4th is the only really, oh wow, I wouldn't exactly call this an efficient mining base, but it's about as best as good as the two players can get, they did seem to forget about their economy with all of the constant pressure going on. More and more Broodlords in production to try to replenish the army, and the Colossi caught out of position. It does look like they're going to be sniped. Fungal Growth going down, catches one Colossi, but an excellent blink gets the other Stalkers in position to protect the second Colossi, and these Roaches are doing tons of damage against the Stalkers, especially with the Infestor's Fungal Growth support. This Infestor does look like it is caught a little bit out of position, but it's not going to be able to do enough. The Roaches are going to go down with the force field separating them from the Colossi. Excellent micro from Cheese, manages to save the Colossi, does lose a healthy number of Stalkers, but he does manage to save the Colossi. And these infested Terrans now just comfortably dancing in the middle of the map. I don't know why they just kind of pump to the beat, but they do. And it does look like GupO is chasing back out across the map, seeing if he continue to do more damage. He does know that his opponent's army is relatively small, as his opponent is mining on only one base. Actually, I don't know if he knows that, but he does know he has an advantage, as Cheese's army has slowly been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, while his is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. GupO now up to 172 supply to Cheese's 83, so it does look like Cheese is trying to use his extra gas supply. We can see he has an excellently large amount of gas, and he's trying to get that in with some Archons, some excellent meat shields. Large number of infested Terrans. I don't agree with this massive number of infested Terrans. These infestors really need to save some energy for fungal growths, because the Roaches, if they cannot engage the army because of the Sentry force fields, really can get out of position very, very easily. But it does look like GupO is just going to walk into Cheese's natural and do tons of damage regardless. These infested Terrans need to be set onto a move before they just die for only taking down a wall. The Roaches finally look like they're going to get into the main now, doing tons and tons of damage. 2 or 3 Broodlords taking out the natural. Burrowed infestors sneaking their way across the lap. Sup Sojourn from GupO. I don't understand that. Probably an inside joke. But these Roaches are doing tons and tons of damage. And finally, Cheese engaging with his army. The what are these? Archons and Colossi engaging the Roaches very, very well, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. These Roaches are held in a choke. They're not able to get up close, but the Archons are just going down so quickly. The Corruptors finally taking out the Colossi. More and more Archons in production, but it does look like GupO has taken this game. 22 more Roaches in production, plus 3 Carapace now also in production. Let's see if we can find out just how much damage these Roaches are doing. They are at 3-2. More and more Archons in production. Only 1 Colossi left with 38 kills. GupO wondering how his opponent still is mining. I don't think GupO knows about the third still mining. This Broodlord challenging these Archons, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough with the Archons doing so much damage. GupO sending in another contingent of Roaches. If these Roaches don't finish the game, then I don't know what will, because they just do so much damage. The Cybercore with only a few hit points left. Cheese throwing Nexi all over the map, just mining as much as he can, trying to see if he can catch up. I don't know if he can. GupO with a tiny little slash, maybe a frowny face, I don't know, with the semicolon right there. GupO wiping out the main. I believe Cheese, ladies and gentlemen, has unfortunately lost. However, I'm not quite sure why there isn't a GG yet, unless there's something I'm missing. GupO is now almost even mining out his 4th and is only just now mining his 5th. These infestors examining close hand the effects of the force field that holds the pylon in place. The Roaches burrowing and unburrowing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a little bit of manner going on. I'm not quite sure what GupO is doing. And tons of gateways in production. Looks like Cheese is going to try to hold this massive Roach force. I don't know that he'll be able to without a Cybercore, which will allow him to warp in. And the Zerglings are now running down. It does look like they're going to see Cheese's army and try to engage for little to no reason. The Zerglings do get melted very, very quickly. GupO just needs to mop up the game now. The Infestors are burrowed. They are not going to be able to help that much. And finally, the Roaches now seeking in to do damage against the opponent's army. Infested Terrans do go down. The Archons go down. And finally, Cheese GG's. And there's the end of the game, ladies and gentlemen. That was game number 4. And GupO, playing for UC Riverside, has defeated NrGCheese of UCSD. And that was game number 4. So it is currently 3-1. If UC Riverside wins their next game, they take the entire series. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in game number 5.